yung ating exercises 2. And I think natapos na naman lahat to. But this is a series of questions about the introduction about cost accounting. I've already uploaded yung ating next module about the accounting for materials. So I hope na naaralin na rin siya. As well as yung exercises number 3. Exercises number 3, I'll be discussing it by next meeting. Bali, binigay ko na sa inyo in advance para mapag-aralan nyo na rin siya in advance. Maganda na nandoon na rin yung exercises 3 para ma-review agad kayo. Okay, let's start for exercises number 2. So, question natin for exercise number 2, number 1, differentiate common cost and joint cost. So, yung common cost is our cost of facilities and services employed in 2 or more accounting periods, operations, commodities, or services, which is also subject to allocation. While yung ating joint cost, so these are costs of manufacturing, materials, labor, and overhead that is incurred for 2 or more products at the same time. And it is also subject to allocation. So both common cost and joint cost, ina-allocate natin yan. Not only from one product but for several products. So sa isang cost, dinidistribute natin siya in 2 or more products. So yun yung pagkakaparehas ng common cost at saka joint cost. Ang pinagkaiba nila is that pag sinabi natin joint cost, specifically ito sa manufacturing cost. Maghahati lang siya sa materials, labor, and overhead. Pero pag sinabi natin common cost, it can be manufacturing cost or it can be non-manufacturing cost. But that is the main difference between common cost and joint cost. So, ang example ng common cost, yung mga depreciation, rentals, kung saan maaari siyang maging manufacturing cost if it would be related to manufacturing. It can also be selling or administrative, depende dun sa function ng expense na incur. Another difference pa ng common cost and joint cost is that yung common cost, it is incurred across periods or it is incurred 2 or more periods. Pero yung joint cost, it was incurred at the same time. Ibig sabihin, nag-acquire ka ng materials, that materials is acquired on the same period kung kailan siya inallocate. Pero yung common cost can be allocated from one period to another. Example ng joint cost is kunyari, nag-acquire ka ng raw materials for wood. And then you're expected to manufacture furnitures like tables, cabinets, chairs, and other wood products. Pag binili mo yung malaking tabla, isa lang naman yun, di ba? And then you incur as one direct materials. Pero there are several products that can be produced with one raw materials. So that is joint cost. Ibig sabihin, sa isang acquisition mo ng materials, there can be several products that can be manufactured out of the materials. Another example din ng joint cost is the crude oil. Crude oil is undergo fractional distillation in order to manufacture kerosene, gasoline, as well diesel. Ibig sabihin, dun sa crude oil, pwede mo siyang i-extract into different products. So yung cost ng crude oil, it is considered joint cost for allocation ng cost ng diesel, kerosene, at saka gasoline. So yun yung example ng joint cost. Let's proceed to another question. And differentiate direct departmental cost and indirect departmental cost. So direct departmental costs are those charges that are incurred specifically or that identify with a specific department. Ibig sabihin, once that in-incur mo siya on such department, dun mo lang siya ilalagay or dun mo lang siya i-incur. Pero pag sinabi nating indirect departmental charges or indirect departmental cost, the cost of such department would be distributed to another departments. Or once na in-incur mo siya, it would be allocated to another departments. So, magandang example nung direct departmental charges is yung salary ng machine operators. Saan yung machine operator, doon lang nagtatrabaho sa direct department, doon sa department na yun. Pero pag meron kang supervisor, let's say factory supervisor, and then there are several departments for which the supervisor monitors. Sabihin natin tatlong department yung monitor ng supervisor. Even though yung mismong department ng supervisor, doon siya binabayaran. Pag in-account natin yung salary ng supervisor, it would be allocated on the different departments for which the supervisor monitor. So, ibig sabihin, i-allocate natin yung salary ng supervisor. So, yun yung example ng indirect departmental charges. Another example din yung direct departmental charges is yung depreciation, rentals, utilities. In case that yung utilities was paid for the different department. Yung rentals din, kung yung rentals buo na for several departments, it would be allocated based on the department. It can be based on the floor area ng department or any reliable basis for the such allocation. And next, ito, differentiate capital expenditures and revenue expenditures. So this is one of the important classification of expenses or costs. So it is important for the cost accountant to classify whether the expenditure is capital expenditure or revenue expenditure. Why? It is because that yung proper recording of such expenditure would uh, it would dictate kung saan natin siya ilalagay. When the expenditure is considered as capital expenditure, it must be recorded initially as asset. But if the expenditure would be considered as revenue expenditure, it would be expense outright. Malaking epekto pag yung cost ng isang acquisition or expenditure ay nirecognize natin initially as asset compared doon sa i-expense mo siya. Siyempre, it would overstate the expense if it would be recognized immediately as expense kung dapat siya naman ay asset. So, kailangan ma-identify yung cost accountant. Kinaklasify natin yung expenditure as asset if the expenditure would benefit the company for one or more than one accounting period. Pero pag yung expenditure would only benefit only one period or the current period, so it would be recognized as expense. So the best example of capital expenditure is the acquisition of property, plant, and equipment, machineries, equipment, building, and other fixed assets. It means that nag-acquire ka ng machinery. The machinery would be used for 1 to 3 years. Kung saan, the machinery would benefit the company for such years. So in recognizing such expenditure, i-recognize mo siya as asset. And then it would be allocated through expense through depreciation. So it is one of the accrual principles of accounting. So syempre, kailangan nating ma-identify yun. Ang example naman ng mga revenue expenditures is yung mga salary ng sales representative, marketing cost, and other period costs. You can say yung product costs are considered capital expenditures. Acquisition ng materials, labor, and factory overhead. Yung revenue expenditure, so these are period costs. Pero take note ha, lahat ng product cost, capital expenditure. Pero hindi lahat ng capital expenditure, product cost. Kasi pag product cost, we are pertaining to manufacturing cost. Under capital expenditure, it includes the acquisition of property, plant, and equipment and other long-term assets. Yan. Okay? Next, what is standard cost? So, nag-set up ng standard cost ang isang company in order to plan ahead and to make a budget for the production. Mahalaga kasing magkaroon ng plano o kaya ng budget for the production kasi malaking cost ang production, lalo na sa mga manufacturing firm. So in order to form or to make a budget for the production, kailangan meron tayong predetermined cost. Kasi the plan or the budget must be made before the start of the production. So kung kailangan siyang magawa, hindi pa naman tayo nabili ng materials, hindi pa tayo nagbabayad ng labor, hindi pa tayo nag-i-incur ng factory overhead. Wala tayong hawak na unit cost para dun sa ating manufacturing cost. Therefore, the thing to be used is what we call the predetermined cost. Ibig sabihin, dinetermine na natin yung cost for materials, labor, and factory overhead bago pa lang mag-start ang production. Kaya siya tinawag na predetermined. And such predetermined costs are what we call standard costs. So, such predetermined cost was established by the information accumulated from past experience and data secured from research studies. Ibig sabihin, this is a reliable estimate of direct material, labor, and factory overhead. Kaya, that is the reason why kung bakit meron tayong mga amounts na nilalagay sa budget. Siyempre, if the company is operating like 5 years, 10 years, they've already accumulated information from their past experiences. Siyempre, if dumaan yun sa napakadaming analytical procedures, hindi yan basta-basta na-compute ng diyan. Kaya siya, ang tawag sa kanya is standard cost. Standard cost is what we call the predetermined cost. Gagamitin natin yung standard cost siguro pagdating pa ng mga banda-banda dyan. From the other topics or other chapters, i-discuss din natin in details yung standard cost. Yan. What is opportunity cost? So, opportunity cost, this is relevant cost which is used in managerial decisions. Opportunity cost is also considered as implied cost. Ibig sabihin, hindi mo siya mararamdaman agad kung hindi mo siya hahanapin talaga. Hindi siya explicit or hindi siya makikita. It requires an analysis para ma-identify natin yung opportunity cost. Opportunity cost is the benefit given up when an alternative is chosen over another. So in every alternative or in any option, there would always be an opportunity cost. Kasi kaya nga nagkaroon ng different alternatives because there would be a benefit that can be obtained for such benefit, for such alternatives. So the benefit that is foregone by choosing the alternative from the another alternative is what we call the opportunity cost. For example, may pinipili ka si option A at si option B. Parehas mong gusto si option A at si option B. Pag pinili mo si option A kaysa kay option B, parang nangihinayang ka kay option B kasi gusto mo rin siya. Pero pag pinili mo naman si option B compared kay option A, parang nangihinayang ka rin kasi gusto mo rin sa option A. So, bakit ka nangihinayang? Kasi meron tayong tinatawag na opportunity cost. May opportunity cost kay A at saka may opportunity cost kay B. Pero, in making decisions for the management, kailangan nating i-weigh yung opportunity cost from each alternative. Siyempre, may pinakamataas opportunity cost, I think doon ka. Siyempre, yung benefit that would be given up if the one alternative is be chosen over the another. So, ganun yung tinatawag nating opportunity cost. Again, opportunity cost is an example of relevant cost. It is also an example of implied cost. Yan. Differentiate differential cost and relevant cost. Differential cost is actually an example also of relevant cost. Hello? And sorry for the commercial. Ano wala bigla. Yan. Mabalik tayo dun sa ating pinag-uusapan kanina. Yan. Yung differential cost is actually an example of relevant cost. So, differential costs are those costs that would be present from one alternative but is absent in whole or in part of another depart for another alternative. Sinabi natin relevant cost. So, these are future costs that change across different alternatives. Yung relevant cost kasi, these are the totality of the difference from one alternative to another. Ibig sabihin, lahat ng difference, partly or whole, basta meron silang difference, so ang tawag doon is relevant cost. Actually, yung differential cost and relevant cost is actually nagsisynonyms na sila. Pero mas broader lang yung ibig sabihin ng relevant cost compared with differential cost. So, halos parehas lang sila. Yan. Let's proceed to cost system. So, this system is wherein the flow of cost is accounted for in detail, so that unit cost and inventory cost can be promptly determined. So, in cost accounting, it is very important that the company has the cost system kasi it would facilitate the computation of the unit price or unit cost. So, it would also help for the manager or the management to decide about their operations, for their production, as well as their manufacturing. Kapag hindi sila gumamit ng cost system, mahirapan silang mag-manage ng kanilang inventory. Napakahirap lalo na kung inventory nila would be numerous, bulky, tsaka sobrang dami. Madali lang mag-manage pag kukonti yung inventory. Pero but if you would be hundreds of thousands of inventory, di ba? Lalong-lalo na yung mga nagmamanufacture ng maliliit na bagay, maliliit na items. Pag liit ng item, sigurado pag dami ng number nun. Pag laki ng item, siguro pag konti. For example, kotse. Malaki yung kotse. So kung ikaw ay nagmamanufacture ng kotse for like yung iba pang company, madali mong bilangin, mabibilang mo sa inyong kamay, diba, yung namamanufacture. Pero kung ikaw ay nagbebenta ng, for example, chichirya, like Universal Robina sa Kenzil, yung kanilang inventory maliliit, pero sobrang dami. So, paano mo ma-count lahat yun if you would not be using cost system? Ibig sabihin, yung cost system, it is widely used, lalong-lalo na sa mga manufacturing company. Hindi ko naman sinasabi na pag malaki yung company, malaki yung size ng inventory nila, hindi sila gumagamit ng cost system. Siyempre, valuable din yung inventory nila. So, for such reason, ina-adapt nila yung cost system talaga. Lalong-lalo na pag malalaking company, kaya nila, i-afford nila. Afford nilang gumamit ng cost system. What are the controlling accounts for manufacturing firm under inventory system? And then this language. So we are using the following accounts: materials control, stores, working process, finished goods, and other controlling accounts like factory overhead, selling expense, general and administrative. Yan. So yung material, so these are the controlling account used to acquire for materials. Yung stores dito, this is for storage or storeroom. Yung paglabas at pagpasok ng mga items sa loob ng storage or storeroom. Work in process are those manufacturing costs that is being used in production. Those finished goods are those work in process that have been already completed and ready for sale. So, kunyari, nag-acquire tayo ng raw materials. So, papasok siya dun sa ating materials ledger cards. After that, i-imbacking natin siya sa storeroom. So, we are using store ledger cards. Pag kukuha tayo ng materials from the storeroom, i-release na natin yung ating raw materials. So, pupunta na siya dun sa work in process. If you are using job order costing, the records to be used for work in process is what we call job order cost sheet. Pero pag process costing, so we are using cost of production report. Yan. And we have also yung factory overhead control. So take note, this is used to record all actual factory overhead costs incurred. So during the beginning or before the start of the production, di ba we are using standard cost or the budgeted costs. So in factory overhead, malaki yung difference between the actual and the budgeted factory overhead, or what we call the applied factory overhead. Kaya meron separate controlling account si factory overhead para dun sa actual factory overhead. We have also selling expense and general and administrative expenses control. What is a chart of accounts? Meron lang yata nalilito about dun sa meaning ng chart of accounts. So, one chart of accounts is considered as listing of accounts and with corresponding account numbers, classified based on the type of the accounts and prepared to properly identify accounts being used in the accounting period and cost system. So, yan yung merong account number sa tabi and then account title sa kabila. So, yung account number, meron siyang specific codes para doon sa type of the accounts. Ibig sabihin, yung mga assets, meron similarities yung account number nila. Iba sa liabilities, equity, expense, and revenues. Kung ano yung type ng kanyang accounts, yun yung codes na ginagamit para doon sa chart of accounts. Karaniwan, inuuna ang assets, sunod yung liabilities, like 110 for assets, 200 for liabilities, 300 for equity, 400 for revenues, then 500 for expenses and etc. Ganun yung ating chart of accounts. What is a factory ledger? And so this is a book of final entry for manufacturing operations and the account title used for the main office in recording transactions affecting accounts found in the books of the factory and the main office. So yung mga related sa manufacturing, lahat ng mga transactions, so dito pumapasok sa factory ledger. And what is a transfer voucher? It is an intra-company form used to inform the factory when transactions are entered into the main office by the same effect manufacturing accounts. The same affects the manufacturing accounts. Oh, wag sinabi natin intra-company form. Oh, it means this is formed within the company. So if there would be transaction from the main office to the factory, so yung transfer voucher ang ginagamit. Yung transfer voucher, parang ito yung reference document para meron ang daling ma-identify, ma-summarize yung mga transactions. Let's differentiate job order costing from process costing. So yung ating job order costing, so these are used to allocate groups of unique products. Whereby yung ating process costing, so this is for homogeneous product. Pag sinabi nating homogeneous product, pare-parehas or similar products. Pero pag pinag-usapan natin ay unique products, it means that each product would be different from each another. You can say these are customized or specialized products. Pag process costing, homogeneous, similar, magkakaparehas. Pag job order costing, magkakaiba, or there would be specification of each product. And for job order costing, each job becomes the cost center for which costs are accumulated. Ibig sabihin, si job order 1, job order 2, job order 3, doon nagsa-summarize yung lahat ng cost. For example, materials, labor, and factory overhead. Pero pag process costing, each processing department accumulates costs per department. Department 1, Department 2, Department 3. Like assembly, processing, and finishing. So, ganun pag process costing. A subsidiary record is needed to track all unfinished jobs and finished jobs. Ang ginagamit natin for job order costing is what we call the job cost sheet. Pag process costing, ang tawag is cost of production reports. This is also a summary of the difference between job order costing and process costing. Pag job order costing, heterogeneous, it means magkakaiba. Process costing, homogeneous, it means magkakaparehas. Parang we can say, pag process costing, it is more on batch processing. For cost accumulation and reporting, it is by job orders. Ibig sabihin, each job magkakaiwalay. Pag process costing, it is by departments or by processes. When unit cost is computed, it is upon completion under job order costing. Pero pag process costing, it is costing period, usually per month. So, yung unit cost, mako-compute siya under job order costing pag nakompleto yung isang job. Job order 1, job order 2. Under process costing, dahil per department tayo, we can divide the process based on its costing period. Kung magkano na yung na-accumulate na direct materials, direct labor, and factory overhead per costing period, that would be the basis for the computation of the unit cost. Unit cost computation per job order costing. Yeah, we have production cost per job and the number of units. Pag process costing, So we are using what we call the equivalent units of production. Yung equivalent units of production, yan yung estimate of the number of units of production with the consideration of the beginning, inventory, work in process, and those work in process that has been finished into finished goods. Or yan, ito nabanggit na rin kanina yung subsidiary record for work in process, job order costing, job order cost sheet. For process costing, we have cost of production report. Pagdating natin ng process costing, gagawa kayo ng cost of production reports. Ayan, huwag kayong mag-alala. What are the elements of product cost under job order costing? I think na-discuss na natin ito before. Meron tayong direct materials, direct labor, and factory overhead. What are the major source document under job order costing? I think it will be the last part of our discussion. And so, meron tayong job order cost sheet. Ito yung napag-usapan na natin kanina. This is the subsidiary record used to record the work in process for job order costing. We have also material stock chart. Ito yung ginagamit pag mag-i-issue na tayo ng inventory from the stock room. Meron din tayong finished goods stock card. Meron tayong factory overhead control cost record for the accumulation of the actual manufacturing overhead. We have also material requisition, time ticket, and clock card. So these are the other source documents used to charge cost to the jobs and department. Yan. And I think that's the end of our topic discussion. So I hope you learned some of the overview of the cost account.